And then you go, well, where's the relationship? It's still a very fragile relationship. Remember, I used to teach my staff this. Staff members cannot look at patients all the same and treat them all the same. They have to recognize that those first 4 visits before patients prepay, that it's a very fragile relationship, just like dating. You know, you go out on the first date versus the second date. I mean, you're minding your P's and Q's versus somebody you've dated for, 20 dates. And there's no difference with these chiropractic patients because we're dealing with human emotion. So this is a very fragile relationship on day one. That's why it's like all hands on deck. Everybody's paying 1,000% attention. And my staff knows that. They know that it better be like crystal clear and crisp how that process is handled and dealt with that day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. So make sure you emphasize this to your staff, that they understand that these are fragile relationships and that we pay a lot of attention to these patients coming through. So again, on day 2, what we should be handling. So we should be confirming their problem, right? So we should be confirming their problem. Remember, we're going through the flow chart. What's my problem? Can you help? How long is it going to take? How much is it going to cost? We're going through the flow chart. And then also remember this thing called present time consciousness, that you only can talk about the major categories. And what are the major categories? Need, time, and money. You can only talk to your target market relative to what's called present time consciousness. In other words, what are the categories of present time consciousness? Well, the first one is when they're on the outside and you're trying to get them in. I cannot talk to that person like they've been in my office for 20 visits. I've got to establish need and I've got to minimize the obstacles to get them in. That's what I have. That's called present time consciousness. I can't talk about treatment schedules. I can't talk about it that we can help them. I can't talk about all this other stuff. The objective is to establish need, minimize the obstacles of time or money to get them in. Take the first step. That's it. We're not going anywhere past present time consciousness. We're not talking about anything. And chiropractors screw this up royally all the time. They just talk about any damn thing about, during a purchase cycle. Hell, they'll talk about maintenance care to somebody who hasn't even come in yet. So there's no talk of maintenance care. There's no talk of treatment schedules. That's like it. I cringe when I see these advertisements, people talking about treatment schedules. You just magnify the hell out of time and money. You just scared them away. Or you're trying to do the opposite to get them to come in. So present time consciousness. We're only talking about need, time, and money to get them in. Boom, that's it. That is it. We're just trying to see what the problem is. That's it. Okay, once they're in day 1, now that's another present time consciousness. We're not going to talk about need, time, or money. Remember, that's the big ones. Past day 1, and the only objective of day 1 is to get them to day 2. So I'm only going to talk about need relative to getting them to day 2. We're not going to talk about treatment schedules and maintenance care. No. You'll magnify the hell out of the obstacles and scare them off. So we stair step. So there's your day 1, just to get them to day 2 relative to need, time, or money. So there's no huge paradigm shifts. You're not magnifying obstacles, and there's no huge paradigm shifts because all of those are bad. They destroy relationships. So that's all we're going to talk about is need, time, and money to get them to day 2. That's it. Now, what's the objective on day 2? Now we're at present time consciousness on day 2. What's the only thing we're going to talk about? Need, time, and money for the next 3 days. That's it. We're not talking about treatment schedules, 3 times a week for 2 weeks, nothing. No. The only objective for need, time, and money on day 2 is to establish it, to get them to pay, to agree to that day and 2 more days. That's it. That's all we're going to talk about. Then when we go to day 4, that's present time consciousness. That's the report of findings. Now we're going to introduce a much broader, now remember, we got a lot more stability, a lot more of a base, a lot more information, a lot more bonding and rapport, trust, confidence, education. So the relationship is 180 degrees difference on the 4th day versus the 1st day. It's night and day. It should be anyway. And then on the 4th day, the goal now is we can ask for a lot more money and a lot more time and things like that, because we've built the relationship to that particular point where there's no way we would have wanted to do that on day 1 or 2. So the objective on day 4 with present time consciousness, with need, time, and money, is for them to commit for all 3 phases of healing. That's the objective there. Not past that. We're not going to talk about maintenance care. They don't care about maintenance care. When I go into the car shop and I think I got a carburetor problem, I don't want him talking about my exhaust. I want him to focus on my carburetor problem, and I want to see it fixed to some degree before he talks about anything else about my damn car. It's called present time consciousness. So day 4, that's when we'll introduce need, time, and money for the 3 phases of healing. That's it. We're not talking maintenance care. We're not talking lifestyle care. That's it. Okay. Now, what's the next step of present time consciousness after that? Well, after they've started feeling better, like the 5th day or more, most patients are feeling better to some degree by at least the 4th visit. So from the 5th visit on is within 30 days, we introduce the lifestyle care. Now, why do we? So we can't do it on day 4. We can't do it on day 2 because of what I just said, present time consciousness, violation of paradigm shifts, etc. So within the first 30 days after, so they've agreed to the 3 phases of healing, need, time, and money. They've agreed to that, okay? Then what's the next present time consciousness? What's the next component on this timeline of a patient? It's the lifestyle. So after day 4, but before the end of 30 days. Why? Why after day 4? They have to be feeling better to some degree. You have had to address the problem they've come in for. And it's the same example I gave earlier. I take my car to the shop for a carburetor. I don't want to hear one word out of you about my exhaust when you haven't done a damn thing to fix my carburetor yet. After you fix my carburetor, I'll listen to you now about other services, et cetera, and I'll actually even have more trust in you because you actually fixed what I came in for. So it's no different. This is called present time consciousness on the timeline of a patient. So after day 4, then you go, well, why before 30 days? Because their enthusiasm significantly starts going down after 30 days. The motivation starts going down after 30 days. That's why every 2 weeks we do what's called a lifestyle presentation. And it should just match in where every 2 weeks we do the new patient orientation. Fits perfectly. That's a separate topic, by the way. And then every 2 weeks, it's the lifestyle presentation. And so after the 4th day, but before the 30th day, they're feeling good. There's a lot of trust. There's a lot of confidence. They've bought into the 3 phases of healing. That's done. It's all working. Now you go to the next phase. Now you go to the next present time consciousness. And what is that? And what should it be in the chiropractor? That's when you introduce the lifestyle. And you never introduce maintenance care. And the reason you never want to talk about maintenance care is 97% of the population does not pick maintenance care. So you have a 97% failure rate if you're going to talk about maintenance care with your patients. And it's the lowest motivation there is. There's very little to no need with maintenance. So it's lifestyle care. Now that's a total different animal. There's pleasure motivation, and there's pain motivation, and there's guidelines, and then there's check marks. That's a whole different animal than this crazy, ridiculous thing called maintenance care that's essentially worthless. Well, that's a presentation. That's an educational sales presentation. That's what that is. Okay? And that's delivered to them at that appropriate time, because that's the best time, the highest probability and likely time that they'll buy into it. And they damn well don't want to hear about lifestyle care when they're not even a new patient. You're talking to them on the street or whatever, and they got a problem. See, it's a total violation of this thing called present time consciousness with need, time, and money. So you can't just wing shit. You can't just start ripping and talk about any damn thing you want whenever you want with a patient. You'll run them off. You can't do that. You got to be highly aware of this thing called present time consciousness and the timeline relative to need, time, and money. So now we got the lifestyle care, and that's when that's delivered. And that's when they buy into regular care for their problems, not only to address specific problems, but to prevent and eliminate problems. And it's guidelines, check mark. There's a whole cascading of events that are around it. It's not maintenance care. That's how so this is how you build a massive practice. And remember, if you're pretty good, if you're not good at any of this, you're not even good at educational sales, you're not even going to get a lot of them in, only 8% that are looking. So you won't even be able to get more than that in. Then if you're not good with patient education and prepays, they're only going to stay for a few visits when they feel a little better and they're gone. So all of these are really bad scenarios. And by the way, that's exactly what most chiropractors are getting, because they don't know what I'm sharing with you right now, and they haven't been trained or educated in it. So they get a lot of negative, a lot of chiropractors seeing 60 visits a week, 80 visits a week. That's like the norm. So, it's not chiropractors maximizing their productivity and financial capacity. And I just read Chiropractic Economics 2 weeks ago. And it's still true. 50% of the chiropractors are out of practice within 5 years. They're failing left and right. They don't know all these concepts about business. Not that they're bad chiropractors. They don't know business. And you better damn well know business if you got only 8% utilization. You better be a black belt at business with that small of a number. Okay, so that's the timeline. So when you do no patient retention, you do educational sales, you get way more than 8%. Then when you know patient education, excuse me just a second. Then when you know patient education, you know how to keep them. That maximizes your capacity between getting new patients and keeping them. Now you need to know how to hire, train, and manage associate doctors. Then when you add the lifestyle patient education, you'll have 20% of your patients take it. And that's not insurance at all. That's just an automated fee. Just like me, I buy toothpaste, every 60 days or whatever. Nobody has to tell me to buy toothpaste. I've already been sold and it's built in. It's a lifestyle purchase. It's cash. So it's the same with the lifestyle patients. When all this happens, this is how it works. 20% of the people will buy into it because they already know, trust, and like you. But 20% won't for different reasons. It doesn't matter. They don't like your personality. You're too rough with the adjusting, whatever. And now you have the difference of 60%. How good you are in the presentation, in other words, your knowledge and experience and skill, mainly knowledge and skill, not experience, is what will determine whether it's 20%, 30%, 40%, 50%. And you will not need a whole lot of new patients at all to have way more patients than you physically can handle. And your case average just doubled. When you add your lifestyle, your case average essentially doubles. You need a hell of a lot less new patients, and you got good quality patients. That's how you want your practice You do not want to just keep in cold call patients and losing them left and right. It'll wear you out. It doesn't give you much business. It's low profitability. It's the most difficult people to deal with. So that's my simple presentation on this thing called present time consciousness. It takes discipline. You cannot just start yapping about need, time, or money. Remember, those are the major factors: need, time, or money. So anytime I'm talking with a patient, the first thing that goes into mind is, where is this patient on the timeline? Because dependent on where they're on the timeline is what I can and should be talking to them about. And what's more important than that, do not be introducing things you should not, because that creates a paradigm shift, and you're typically going to magnify time or money with a paradigm shift, and that combination destroys relationships. And that's what happens with chiropractors who are unknowledgeable and not trained all the time.